Chief Futurist at Futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, and author Nikolas Badminton joins us on Canada Now for his weekly visit. And Nick, there are about 1,400 Starbucks locations in Canada, 15,000 across the U.S. Starbucks wants to become the gas station of the future for EVs, right. But you've been talking about this for quite some time.
Yeah, I was in Montreal, I think it was like February 2017, and I was chatting to the Canadian Fuel Marketing Association. So people that literally sell gas through gas stations. And I stood up and I talked about this kind of idea of, coffee shops becoming the new refueling point for electric vehicles. I mean, this was a long time ago when I wasn't even driving EVs at that point in time. I sort of did that a couple of years later in 2018. But what was interesting was, I chatted to these people with multi-generational businesses. Granddaddy had shipped gas in, and we ran these, networks of gas stations. It was highly profitable, and it was kind of like the beginning of a death knell for the industry in a way. And we've seen over the years how many gas stations have sort of disappeared. We've still got a huge reliance on gas, so it's not disappearing that quickly, but it's definitely going to change. But what's interesting is, in the US, they think by 2030, there's going to be 26 million electric cars. In Canada, and this is from a government website, this is from a government source, they're hoping it's 60% zero emission vehicles or plug-in hybrid electric or full electric vehicles by 2030, 60%, and 100% by 2035, which is probably, I think the numbers are a little bit rich for my liking. But bottom line is, we're going to need solutions for charging. And Starbucks popping up and saying, hey, you know what, like park it over there, get 30 minutes worth of electricity through a fast charger, which by sort of the next 2-3 years might be good enough to fill up your car entirely. Yeah. And, spend $14 on a latte or however much it is. I don't drink coffee, so I'm just speculating on the price.
Well, right? By then it might very well be $14. Maybe that's a topic for a different time. How much is coffee going to be later on down the road? Well, you mentioned 26 million electric cars in the U.S. by 2030, and they'll need 10 times as many EV chargers. So I don't know, this idea makes sense. And Starbucks is partnering with Volvo and ChargePoint to install EV chargers in its parking lots along a 1,350-mile route from Denver to Seattle, with stops available roughly every 100 miles. And that's a route with very few charging stations. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I've driven that route actually, Jeff, and it's pretty desolate, right? It's it can be over 100 miles between gas stations on that route as well. It's a beautiful route, by the way, as well. Love Colorado, love driving all the way through Utah, etc. But what's interesting about this is the beginning, right? So Starbucks are testing this out. Let's find some partners that are probably going to pony up some money. Volvo and ChargePoint, all good. The people still have to pay for electricity, I think. I'm not 100% sure in this case, but typically, you've got a ChargePoint account, you pay for your electricity, and it's all good. Starbucks, they might actually, do it for free. They're already doing this in places like Tim Hortons and whatever across Canada. Petro Can is doing this a lot. That's where I've actually charged my vehicles quite a lot before, and there's lots of other networks. Even the en route stations finally have got like EV charging networks. So it's getting there, right? But what's interesting is, if you've got an EV, you're going to be plugging it in at home, and that's going to be good enough for probably 99% of your uses. The people that do drive a lot and do drive long distance, which is a smaller amount of people, will be using things like this. But, it's going to be about omnipresence. It's going to be outside of coffee shops, grocery stores, integrated street lamps and plugs on the street. We see that in the UK. We see that in Quebec as well. We see that in Quebec already, which is very pro EV, which is amazing. But, this stuff is just a natural extension of keeping people in the Starbucks store for as long as possible,
right?
So that you're in 2035, your $45 croissant is purchased by the bucket load.
All right,
I speculate, Jeff.
That's an episode for the future. The price of croissants in about 15 years. Well, you mentioned Tim Hortons is already doing this, because I was going to ask, what if Tim Hortons got on board? I'm thinking, if Tim Hortons made this a thing,
right?
I would think that EV sales in Canada, I would think they would skyrocket. What did you think?
I've only ever seen it at a few Tim Hortons. There's one up in the Muskoka region, I think around Bracebridge, that's got one. But I'm pretty sure like Canadian Tire as well. So it's these cultural brands that want to keep people. Actually, Canadian Tire does it more than Tim Hortons. These cultural brands, it becomes more accepted. What's interesting, driving across to Prince Edward County. These are some of my experiences. I was outside a Canadian Tire and there was like 2 charging spots, right? Okay. And then I looked across and there's like 25 spots for Teslas.
Oh,
so
really?
So it's getting there. Tesla knows how to build its business, and people know it's as much about the charging network as the car. I'm not a huge fan of Tesla as a vehicle anyway, personally. But it's kind of interesting. I really, really like this sort of progressive stepping forward. They're a bit late to the game, though.
Starbucks?
I think, yeah. I mean, they could have started having these sort of plans 2-3 years ago. Now it's become, on vogue to be environmental and part of ESG plans and whatever. Is it a PR stunt? I don't know. I think it's part PR and look how sustainable we are, and part, this is kind of the future of driving across America. So, I'm a big fan of this, but at the same time, we could have started earlier and we could have got everything together, but it's going to be a rocky road for electric vehicle adoption, from the price and the availability all the way through to being able to, drive 500 kilometers, on a single day without having to stop too often.
Well, Volvo says its electric cars can go from 20% charge to 90% in 40 minutes. So for those that don't have EVs like myself, that gives us an idea of just how long it'd take to charge. But given local tourism is up, given the price of gas is certainly up. I mean, heck, what do we talk about in Canada? We talk about the weather and we talk about the price of gas and complain about it, and rightfully so. Given all that, I would think like a Tim Hortons, a Canadian brand, what's a more Canadian brand than that, would say, look, given everything that's happening, come by here, have some Timbits, have a coffee, and charge up your car.
And even tourist destinations. So I stayed in Prince Edward County. This was 3 years ago. I was driving my Chevrolet Bolt, and I went there, and there's hardly any charging points. There's a couple of Tesla ones at some wineries and a hotel, and there's almost nothing. But there's this charge point in Picton. Great. Drove along. It's broken. And a lot of these chargers, 2-3 years ago, they were broken a lot of the time. Just in my personal experience. But these travel destinations, tourist destinations, bring people to your town. People will walk the high street for an hour or two, charge their vehicles. Typically people with electric vehicles these days have probably got a little bit more money to spend. And it's all good, right? You're going to be boosting local communities. So, these smaller tourist destinations can start thinking about this as being a really good draw,
Well, I hope this ends up being a thing, and I think it very well is going to be a thing. Chief Futurist at Futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, author Nikolas Badminton. Nick, appreciate it. Hey, you're taking August off. We'll talk to you again in September.
Keep on trucking, Jeff.